Ladies and gentlemen, this is Print versus Web versus Bear. I'd like to introduce the panelists. We have Stephen Cloud and his beard. Stephen, which side are you representing?
Half print, half bear.
Half print, half bear. And John?
I'm like a chimera of all three.
Chimera of all three. John Rosenberg does goats. And Chris Hastings and Commissioner James Gordon Hastings will be representing, I guess, half web and half small bear.
Yes.
Okay. The focus of this panel is to talk about some of the different ways to approach comics. We've got the possibility of running things online. We've got the possibility of running things into print either as an original goal or as an afterthought or merchandising. And of course, bears. Bears always sell. So I'm going to open things up to the small bear and his keeper and ask him for his thoughts. Print, web, bear. Give me 2 minutes about what the mightiest form of webcomics is. Go.
All right. Well, I have some theories about print versus web versus bear related very much to a rock paper scissors sort of situation. And if it weren't like this, one of them would have clearly dominated the entire world by this point. But I think they ought to keep each other in check pretty well. A lot of various scenarios. You know, obviously with your print, with your newspapers, that you know, you got a lot of deforestation there. That'll kill some bears and force them from their homes. You know, but on the other hand, you get Jim Davis out in the woods. Bear's gonna eat him. But then, you know, say a white ninja, or maybe even myself or someone else who makes a t-shirt and slaps a bear on it to be hilarious, that humiliates a bear. And in turn, they'll maul the web cartoonist. But it all goes in a circle.
John, print, web, bear.
I think they all have a place. I don't think you can really say, you know, one or the other. I mean, you know, in these tough economic times, bear farming could be incredibly lucrative. I think if you're, it really depends where you are in the life cycle of your comic. If you're starting out, the web is obviously the way to go. Low cost of entry. You know, no need to get somebody to do your distribution for you. No need to worry about shipping stuff. Once you do have the audience, so obviously you need merchandise. So print is a good way to, you know, to do that. If you're self-publishing, that's always a good way to go. But if you're talking about web versus print in terms of getting someone to print your stuff for you, I think that's very tricky, and you have to make sure you're dealing with the right sorts of people, as you probably found out.
Yeah. Stephen, you recently come off of a syndication sort of deal with United Media.
Right.
And that would have possibly led eventually to being syndicated into newspapers, although how much that medium is worth pursuing at this point is an open question, and that brings in an intermediary between you and your audience. So what are your thoughts on this?
Well, it didn't really work out for me in terms financially or otherwise. My audience actually took a nosedive when I went to comics.com, and I don't know if that's because the format changed to be much smaller, or my writing was forced to change to fit that smaller size. And I really never got a shot at syndication. Early on, Ted was very enthusiastic and Ted Raw was enthusiastic, but I mean, I think my comic is very, you know, way off in left field. It's a niche comic. I don't think that too many newspaper editors would have the guts to run my comic and knocking out some more broad appeal. So I mean, that's what you're up against. With print, you have to really focus on a much broader appeal, at least enough to make the printing of it worthwhile. But the web, you can be a little bit more targeted to a smaller audience and potentially make eke a living off of them. So
And it's really wonderful because you don't have to tool your content to appeal to everyone. You can make a certain segment of your fan base really, really happy, and then piss everybody else off, and it doesn't matter. I think also we need to differentiate between like book print and newspaper print. I think it's fairly clear that newspaper print is going the way of the dinosaur very, very quickly. I don't know how many newspapers have gone under in the last few weeks, but there's not like a lot of new opportunities coming up there. I just got a book deal through Random House My book's going to be published and in stores in June, and that's been a really great experience, I think, to kind of give the flip side to what you've experienced, where since they're not having to put it in newspapers that housewives in Kansas are going to read, they can target their marketing a little more narrowly, and therefore they're not messing with what I've created. They're not trying to tool it towards people who can only handle a syllable at a time. So that's been really positive. They've been really great to work with.
Let's follow up on that a little bit, because Stephen, you wound up with a syndicate and an editor, and there's expectations about format and content and fitting with the rest of the audience. And John, you wound up with an editor and an advance.
Yes.
And a deadline.
Many deadlines.
With the expectation that would be the stuff you'd already put out previously. One of the things that you almost never get in web is the second set of eyeballs, other than maybe your girlfriend or your boyfriend or somebody you really trust looking at things, rather than a cold-eyed editor. So I want each of you to talk a little bit about what you found to be the experience of working with an editor. Steve, I'll start with you.
Well, Ted was great. I mean, he's a friend of mine. I respect him, and he gave me some great feedback and helped me kind of adapt my style to the tight 3 panels. So, I mean, it was a good experience overall. I think I learned a lot, but I think the expectation is always there. If you're going to be in papers, you have to have kind of like, a roster of characters who all have their little personality and they all kind of work together. And that's great, those are good comics, but that's not what I did. So I think that's kind of where I suffered. Like, no, I mean, Ted was supportive, but I knew that what I was doing wasn't ultimately something that they would pick.
John, what do you find your experience working with an editor is like?
I was kind of surprised in that my editor hasn't done very much editing at all. The thing about doing a graphic novel is unlike a regular novel where you can go in and retype words. It's very hard to rejigger a graphic novel once it's been drawn. The only change they made me make to the interior contents were some song lyrics that were a licensing issue. Like, we would have had to gotten legal permission, and so I just made up hilarious parody lyrics and replaced them, and that was it.
How hilarious.
They're extremely hilarious, and you should buy the book and find out.
Congratulations.
Thank you. So that was a little bit of a surprise, because she's like a fan of the strip and she likes it as it is, so she's not messing with it. If I was doing something from scratch, where I sold them like a concept and then they bought it and then I developed it and drew it, I think there would probably be a lot more interaction at that point, because I could bring them in on the story process. But they've been really smart about it, and I would welcome that kind of feedback at this point. I think if you've got a good working relationship with somebody and they're not telling you what to do and they're suggesting things, and you can have a good back and forth and come to consensus, it can only make it stronger.
Chris, you've put out a couple of books in the last couple of years, almost done entirely on your own. And John, you did books of goats in the past and then kind of abandoned that path. So I want Chris to talk a little bit about his experience of doing that, and John, why you stopped and went to a large corporation to help you out with that process. So Chris, starts off.
Well, I write and draw my webcomic.
You have to ask the commissioner to stop being adorable.
So yeah, and I drew it, and I wrote it, and I drew it, and I had a guy that inked it, and then I just sent the files to the printer and said, "Can you lay it out?" And they said yes. And they sent me proofs and proved that it would look good, and and that's how that went. And I paid for the books up front, and then shipped them to people who bought them. And I did the same thing for the second book.